Okay, so today we have Dan Clark with us. He is the director of the Local Government Center with MSU. He also used to be the ag agent down in Teton County, so he's not completely foreign to ag. So he will be speaking on negotiation styles, and I should probably share the screen. Okay, so Dan will be speaking on negotiation styles to help you in all the negotiating that you do on your farms. So I will get out of the way here with that, and I will let Dan take it away.
Great, thank you. So yeah, it's when she says I'm not completely foreign to this world. It's been 15 years since I've been in this world. Yeah, my memory is not all that it could be, but so great. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you in an hour and a half. I'm hoping to wander around. So just yell at me if I get too far away from the computer because the microphone may not work. Yeah, in an hour and a half, I'm going to try to present enough information to make you dangerous. Around negotiating and just thinking about how you want to approach that. There's whole courses, 40-hour courses on negotiation. It's a pretty complex area, so I'm just going to give you sufficient, I think, to in an hour and a half to help you understand a little bit about yourself and how you might want to approach a situation where you need to negotiate. So let me ask the group here, what are your negotiation needs? What circumstances and situations do you anticipate being in or have been in where you would like to have had better negotiation skills?
Land lease deal?
Okay. So sitting down at land lease with a neighbor, or what's so probably something you know, or is it something you don't know, or both? Okay, land lease deals, what else? Yeah, so there's not like a set price on that thing, is there? Right, so you're trying to get the most out of it, they're trying to get the least out of it, right? And you may start out very far apart. So when do you find that when you feel like it's a good deal for both of you? Yeah. All right, so we're gonna go through, here's the objectives for the day. There's 5 major, I should have changed that to it's negotiation styles. So I'll just tell you, I started out years ago, probably 12 years ago, with my first negotiation presentations. There wasn't a lot of demand for that, but there's a lot more demand for conflict management. So a lot of materials that I use for negotiation, I converted over to conflict management. So now I'm having to deconstruct that back into negotiation. So if you see things in my slides that haven't quite been ripped out, you might refer to conflict. I apologize. I'm meaning the negotiation. So there's 5 negotiation styles that we're going to talk about. We're going to learn about your natural style. Where is it that you naturally approach these situations, right? So that would be helpful to know, how do I naturally, what's my natural inclination when I find myself in a situation where I'm going to be negotiating? Where do I start at, right? And then we're going to talk about these other negotiation styles, and you say, well, this is where I start at, but really in this situation, I really want to be this type of, adopt this type of negotiation style. What would that look like? How do I get into that headspace so I can approach this in the appropriate mindset? Does that make sense? Hopefully it will by the next hour and a half. We'll make sense of that. Strengths and weaknesses of each of those styles, right? So we're hoping to elevate your understanding of what are these different negotiation styles and what would be most appropriate for me to adopt them. It would be probably inappropriate for you to approach every negotiation with your spouse that you would with the used car salesman. You see that happening? It may not always work out for you with your spouse, as if every time you're trying to negotiate, well, what are we going to watch for TV? Right? Approach it like you're going to try to get the best deal out of that used car salesman. It may not be this program. So we're going to try to give you some tools around that. So first, I want to help you start thinking about different situations, different scenarios, so you can start impacting the circumstances you find yourself in. So the situational types for decision making. So there's 1, 2, and 3 different types: type 1, type 2, type 3. And if you look at type 1, this isn't in your handouts, by the way, so sorry. But type 1, this is where the problem, you understand what the problem is, you understand what the solution is. So it's easy for you to adopt that solution. If you're the decision maker, you say, here's the problem, here's the solution. They're both very clear to me. I can make the decision on it. There, type 2 is where you know what the problem is, but the solution is unclear. I'm not sure what that solution is. And so you may not be the best person to make that decision right off the bat. You want to think about, who do I need to connect with to help me better understand what might be an appropriate solution for the situation. And what the problem is, I'm not quite sure how to go forward. So in that situation, who would be in your, call list? Who would you connect with, or who would you reach out to if you found yourself in a situation like that? Who's in your, what's that TV show where they do the lifeline? They call people, answer questions. What's that? Yeah. So who's on that list? Who are you going to call out and say, hey, help me think this through? Here's the problem. I'm not sure what to do. Who would be on your short list? Parent? Yeah. And why would you go to your parents? Probably been through it before. What would you say about your relationship with your parents? More comfortable, more familiar? They understand you, you understand them a little bit better? How about the level of trust? High level of trust, low level of trust? May depend on the relationship, but there may be a high level of trust in. I trust what you have to say. Right? Who else might be on that list? A mentor. So when you're working with someone that's helping you, may not be a parent that's similar in their status, like for example. So think about that in those situations. Who would be that person you reach out? I do a lot of training for local government officials. Right? So if you think about it in that context, the city says this is what the problem is, and we're not sure what the solution is. They may reach out to the citizens. Right? They're facilitating a process for the citizens. So that might be who they reach out to and say, hey, folks in town, help us figure this out. Because we all know the solution. Right? That's who they might reach out to. And then type 3, where you don't know what the problem is. You know things aren't working well, but I can't quite get my head wrapped around this type of problem. Clearly, I don't know what the solution is, but whatever the circumstance is, it is not working well for us. Not sure what it is, but it's complicated, it's messy. And so in that situation, you're going to want to look out, really reach out to those partners and say, let's, it could be your banker, could be the seed salesman, it could be your fertilizer guy, it could be the extension agent. I need to get a team put together to help us get our head wrapped around this particular problem and try to come up with a solution. So I just want to help you start thinking through, and I probably should have been advancing these slides. So commonly understood problem, this is type 1, solution is known, but it can be implemented easily. So as a decision maker, you can identify and carry out the best technical solution to that problem. Okay, so I'm going to jump through some of these. I think we've explained it well there. Let's just, so here again, problem so this type 3 situation where the problem is unknown, the solution is unknown. So many people disagree on the problem. No single problem can be identified. Here's this is the source. It's just this big mess. With no consensus on the problem definition, there can be no consensus on a potential solution. So as the decision maker, you must rely on those partners who do you connect with to find that solution. And this is the thing. I'll use a personal example. I do a lot of mountain adventures, mountain climbing, alpinism, rock climbing, ice climbing, trail running, long distances in the mountains. And I'm usually with partners. When we get to a situation, in a mountain situation, where we don't quite know what to do, we're going to get our heads together. We're going to talk about it. We're going to look at the environment, what's going on, what are some potential options for us. Then we're going to make a decision. And I like doing that as a team because that solution, we're all committed to that. We've worked through and negotiate out what is it, our path forward. And then we're all committed to that path. We're committed to supporting each other through that process. Right? So it's easier to have that buy-in. It's not uncommon to sit at a trailhead, right? And we're trying to pack our gear into a pack, and we're not sure what we're going to expect. We're not sure, since we don't know what's out there, we're not sure what to pack. So we often will sit around and say, well, you're going to take this, I'm taking that, great, I'll take that also. Like sunscreen or whatever else, right? So we all have the same equipment. So if things go bad, one person doesn't say, well, I've got the equipment to get through this situation, but you don't, so see you later. We're all committed. We're going to either succeed together or fail together. That's what I like about that type 3, where we come together and try to figure out that solution, and we're all committed to making it, implementing it. All right, so here's the decision-making process, right? On one end, you have less partner involvement. On the other end, you have more partner involvement, right? We talk a lot about this when we deal with elected officials and cities and counties, how they approach things. In this case, we talk about public participation, but in your case, you want to think about who's that group of people around me that I can draw upon and connect with, helping through these situations. So when the decision by vested power alone, so the decision's easy, solution's easy, it's not much, it's not very complicated. But it gets more complicated as we move across. Decision with minimal input for informed consent, decision with repeated opportunity and substantive input. So you're really looking for more substance from your partners to help guide you through that decision-making process. All the way up to say, look, there's no one person that's making this decision, but we're going to make this decision. There may be some, say for example, you're working on an operation with your parents. There might be 2 generations, maybe 3 generations, maybe some other siblings or cousins that are also involved. And it's a fairly large operation, so you know, we're going to move our calving date. Is that a big deal? You're going to move it earlier in the season or later. Say you move it from February calving to May calving. And there may be some good rationale why you want to do that. Is it easy to come back from that decision? It's not easy to come back from that decision. So we don't know. The outcome of that decision is somewhat unknown. We anticipate, we think it's going to work out, and here's all the data and science to help inform that decision. But it's a big decision. If you want to be the one making the decision and have the success or failure fall upon you, or you want to make that decision collectively. Say, are we all in? Are we all committed? Are we going to move forward with this? Good or bad? It's not just me, but it's all of us. Right? So then you don't get that finger wag and say, I told you it wouldn't work. And no one likes that finger wag. All right. So let me start out with talking about emotional intelligence. Have you ever heard that term emotional intelligence before? Anyone want to venture a definition? If you were to define what emotional, I have the definition. Anyone want to take a crack at how would you define or give some context? What is emotional intelligence?
I would say it's probably doing some, take fresh out of school as opposed to something. You may have the same knowledge per se. That's how I understand.
More experience, more wisdom comes from experience. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I was thinking being able to read people.
Yeah. Be able to read and understand people. You think that's going to be helpful for you when you're managing conflict or getting into negotiations? Try to figure out where are they coming from, what do they value, what's important to them, how do I speak to that as I craft a solution or a deal? Try to find out what's really important so then I make sure I'm satisfying them. It might be in a creative or the way that you didn't expect, where you can find a mutually agreeable or experience for both of them. Yeah, so emotional intelligence, the definition we like to use is the ability to recognize emotions in yourself and in others, and be able to manage those emotions and manage your relationships. So in other words, the more I understand myself and what makes me, why do I think the way I think? What's important to me? What is it that I value? What is my default? Remember we talked about my natural inclination when it comes to conflict or when it comes to negotiation? What is my natural inclination? If I understood that, understand where I'm coming from, and then with that knowledge, I can then choose how I want to engage the circumstance of my life. Likewise, the more I understand the other person and what makes them tick, the better able I am to approach them to come out with a mutually agreeable or at least something like that. So this is what I see, the CEOs of companies. A lot of them have a high level of emotional intelligence. They're able to read people, understand people, they understand themselves very well, and they're able to use that knowledge to manage those relationships around them. That's what makes them very successful. Most CEOs, it's not that they're good at producing something, they're good at relationships. And those relationships are what makes that company produce something. Not people, rather than things. Things, you got technical people who do things. Well, who manages those technical people? Right, that's the person that understands how those technical people think and operate. Right, so that's our definition for emotional intelligence. Right, so the higher the emotional intelligence that you have, the better you're able to deal and interact with people. So what is it that we can do to build that emotional intelligence? So to break it down, we've got 4 components. So just think about it. Self-awareness. I'm aware about who I am, what makes me tick. How do I manage that? Right, now that I understand who I am, how do I choose to make decisions about who I am, right, in my behavior? How do I choose my behavior with the knowledge I have about myself? Then the social awareness. I'm aware of what's going on around me. And how do I choose my behavior to engage people around me? So when you look at this definition, what is it that you as an individual have control over? So you only have control over yourself. How you choose to engage. You can't control the other person. You can only control yourself. It's all about intention. What is my intentionality in these relationships? All right. The pine recessionary caterpillars. Anyone heard about these recessionary caterpillars? All right, so they're in Western Europe, Portugal, Spain area. They're similar to our tent caterpillars in that area. They live in little tents, right? And then when they emerge from their nest in the spring, they come out of that nest in a long procession. They're not connected to each other, but for whatever reason, instinctually, they will align themselves in a long line, nose to butt, nose to tail. And they'll work their way through the forest and up into the trees doing their caterpillar thing. But they'll travel around this long procession. So a naturalist, a French naturalist, was looking at these things saying, I wonder what makes them tick. Why are they doing this? Why are they aligned in this long procession? And what would cause them to deviate from that procession or that track? What would cause one to say, hey, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm going to go. So he devised a very complicated experiment. What he did is he placed them in a continuous circle along the rim of a flower pot. So they're in this continuous circle. They start marching around this circle, round and round and round. He said, I wonder, he started thinking, I wonder how long it will take them to realize that they're going nowhere. They're just going around in a circle. Turned out 7 days and 7 nights later, on the verge of exhaustion, dehydration, and starvation, the scientists pushed one off into the flower pot, where they all then went onto the plant, which was their food source. So they nearly died walking around bitter. What these caterpillars were doing is they were following their instinct, habit, tradition, custom, past practice, precedent, standard practices. Does this sound familiar at all for you folks? And you're dealing with your operation, particularly if it's a multi-generational operation, and you're bringing maybe a new perspective, a new idea, a new way of looking at things? They say, oh no, we've always done this. I'm sure you've never heard that. Put it down. We've always done it this way. And there may be for good reason. Right? There may be good reason for it. I'm not discounting that. But I want to make sure that as we're doing these things, that we're doing intentionality. We've explored other options. The decision we're making to follow that tradition is based on relevant data and good information that's the best alternative. Does that make sense? So you want to make sure you're examining why is it we're doing what we're doing, not just doing it out of momentum. The momentum into the next year is we're being pushed into the next year based on what we did last year, the year before, and the year before. So being creative, being thoughtful, thinking outside the box, sometimes is a good thing, sometimes it's not a good thing. That's where you've got to start talking about what are the risks and how do we negotiate new practices, new opportunities. So what is it that the caterpillars lack? What is it that they need? Their little group on the flower plot. We needed a leader. What else? Exactly. Persuasion, right? And in this case, we need the, not yet. And that side force kind of kick them out. But yeah, somebody to say, hey, we need to do something different. A vision, if you will, right? We've got to do something different. Here's our vision. And so that's really what we're looking at. I have this term. Investment follows vision. Think about that. Investment follows vision. So if you're trying to looking to initiate a new practice, a new something, it's more powerful if you had a vision as to why you want to do what you do. People can see that vision. Where is it going to take us? What's it going to lead us to? What's that outcome going to look like? You can articulate that vision. People are more willing to say, okay, I want to do that too. Then the discussion is based on will these decisions we're making today get us where we want to be in the future? Completely different conversation. If you don't have that vision, trying to initiate some sort of change today, I think that's going to be a harder sell. The tradition and habit and instinct is going to be a lot easier to fall back on. That past experience is easier to stick with because I don't know where you're going. If you can say, hey, this is what I'd like to see, this is the vision, this is where I want to head to. And let's talk about the decision we need to do. Completely different conversation. Does that make sense? I usually work with, so for example, I'll come into a city and I'll call me up and say, hey, what, we've got a meltdown going on between the council, the mayor, the staff, everyone. It's just this big question. And often, what's usually happening is there's no clear vision for the city. So when they're making decisions, there's no context for the decisions they're making. They're just pulling stuff out of thin air. So what about this? What about that? Until we can organize them and have them start articulating about what do we want this city to look like. Once they get that vision in their head, then they can start organizing the decision-making process to lead them. So think about visioning and then that leadership, that skill you need in order to move that move that vision forward. Leadership is necessary for moving the vision forward. So perspective. One of the things I think to help with this process, hopefully I'm not losing you here in my thought process. Having perspective is really important. So I'm going to show you a picture here. Any guess what this is an image of? We're going to Google Earth image. Okay, the top of the Tin Road. That's all you can see, is it? So advanced, it's got maybe. I've done this with youth, and they'll say, "Ooh, are getting much missiles locally?" No. It's not the world we live in. You see Google Earth, and you think something's going to blow up. So think about this: if you're mired in some sort of a tense relationship or a circumstance, that it's hot with emotion. And all you see is this really close and tight image, right? Knees and elbows and hot breath. It's really tight. Perspective is really limited. Now, if we were to back out, now is it clear what you're looking at? Yeah, back out a little bit further. So what I'm looking to have you start thinking about is when you get in those circumstances where things are really close and tight, maybe you need to back up a little bit and gain some perspective. Get the bigger picture, right? I want to see the larger context. What is it that I want out of this circumstance? What is it that they need? When you're all in tight, whoop, one way. When your situation is, oh, you might have broken. There we go. There we go. When it's all in tight, you may not see that. This is where your lizard brain takes over. And that's that default I talked about earlier, your default reactions. This is where you're all full on. And so the idea is that we can back up from that situation a little bit. I can choose now, instead of my default reaction, my lizard brain, my fight or flight response, I can step back and say, now, how do I want to strategically engage in this situation? My son, about 5 years ago, he's like a sophomore, junior in high school. I was driving home from school after practice. And he was relating to me this really emotional situation going on with him involving, high school kids, right? They're all full of hormones and whatever else, lots of drama. He was all wound up about this particular situation. I had to say, okay, in my mind, I'm thinking, hey, why don't you just back it up? Step back a little bit and think about what is it you want out of the situation. I just described to him that, and this is the rare time, this is what we talked about, where I felt as a father, I gave some good advice that stop with a teenage kid. And he's like, oh, yeah. And so he was able to step back, figure out what his role was in this drama, and was able to, if nothing else, extricate himself from it, and not get so involved in emotionally charged with it. And then how to manage that situation to an appropriate outcome, right? So it was his first glimpse into emotional intelligence. He was able to gain that perspective and choose, how do I engage with this situation? All right. So we want to gain his perspective, but we don't want to get so attached at it where we're disengaged, right? We want to be close enough in there that, yeah, we can see there's a variety of different ways to get to the Moose Lodge. It's not just one road, but now there's many ways, many pathways that I can choose to get there. Is this resonating with you at all? All right. So I'm going to show you a picture here. And I want you to take a look at it. I'll give you 5 seconds to look at it. And tell me what you see. What is it? Ready? All right. What did you see? You may have seen this picture before. What did you see? Say it out loud. Warshak test, right?
Cruella de Vil.
Okay, so you saw Cruella de Vil. So like an old, let's say an old hag, right? You saw an old hag. Did everyone see an old hag, or did somebody see something different? A woman looking away. Did she look younger or older? Younger. So some of you saw a younger woman looking away, and you saw an old hag who was Cruella de Vil, right? I was trying to. Did you want to show back up there again?
Yeah, there's something else there. I was trying to remember.
Yeah, so this is interesting. It's an interesting picture because what it's showing you is this kind of ink blotchy white-black image. And your brain is going to look at that image and it's going to go until it locks in on an image. And then it's going to stop. It's going to relax and say, hey, I see an old hag. Someone else says, I see a young woman. And then your brain's done. You're no longer trying to solve that problem. Thing is, both those images occupy the same space at the same time. You could get in a knockdown drag out with someone and say, no, it's an old woman. No, it's a young one. No, it's an old one. No, it's a young one. Right? You can get in this situation This is where it's helpful both in managing conflict and in negotiations to step back and say, hey, maybe there's something that I'm not seeing. Help me understand what you're seeing. Share with me what you see. And hopefully you will, if you can see their perspective, it's like, oh, I never saw that. Now I am enriched because I see something in addition. I see what you see, plus I know what I see. All right, so now how many of you are still trying to figure out the old one and the young woman? Which one can you see? Neither of them, or
I see the
young woman? Okay, so the old woman. Okay, the old woman has got a relatively large head, right? Chin down here, mouth, big old nose. She's got an eyelash here and a big eye here, and she's got this deal draped over her head. You don't see that? Big head, tilted down. She's looking towards me. Two eyes, a big nose, and a mouth with a chin, and her head's tilted into this big muffler around. Is muffler or like a shawl? Now, who can't see the young woman? So the young woman, she's looking into the screen, away from us. There's an eyelash, a little nose. That's her jawline and an ear. Smaller head. Big head for the old hag, smaller head for the young woman looking into the screen.
I could see the old woman for about a second.
Yeah, so it's hard to hold it. And I don't know, and I have to look at more research, but whether, if you see it, that's going to be your default. Whatever you saw, like you saw the old hag, that may be your default. You might have to work for the young woman and vice versa. But it's interesting, though. I think the point being is that the same image, or two images, can occupy the same space at the same time. So particularly in negotiating, particularly in conflict, try to step back and say, help me see what you're seeing. I see it this way. Clearly, you see it in a different perspective. You have a different way in which you're looking at this. Help me see and understand. Right? If you think about our world right now in this country, we're not that far apart, but by golly, we can't understand both sides of the spectrum. And it's getting to be frustrating. Right? And so if we just listen and talk to each other about stuff. All right. Yes? Oh, am I fading out? I saw it. All right. All right. So here's going to be another one. Maybe it's going to be easier for you. All right. What did you see? Okay. Everybody's probably saw the rabbit, but there's also a duck, right? Did you see the duck first?
He's going like this in the back.
Yeah. A lot of people call it the drunk duck.
Yeah.
So if you think of a drunk duck, you'll see the duck. Yeah. So you got a rabbit and a duck, right?
Oh, I see.
Two images can occupy the same space at the same time. Yeah. All right. It's funny because my mind prefers duck. When I see it, it's always goes to the duck first. I have to. Yeah. All right. So do you guys have a piece of paper and a pen? Writing utensil? What I want you to do, and this goes for you folks at home also, or if you need a pen or a writing utensil, I want you to take your writing utensil, place it in your non-dominant hand, and sign your name. The non-dominant hand and sign your name.
We're trying to sign up digitally, or how we sign? No.
Yeah, well, so let me ask, how did it feel when you signed it? Have you done it already? Yeah, how did it feel to sign your name with your non-dominant hand? Yeah. So what did it feel like? So back in first grade, it probably looks bad. What else? How else would you describe it? The experience of signing with your non-dominant hand.
You really have to think about it.
So you're concentrating. The level of concentration goes way up. And in spite of the concentration going up, the legibility probably goes down, or the smoothness. What else? It's awkward. Why is it so awkward? It's not like you just woke up today and said, oh, look at this. You understand? Right? You've been attached to your body your whole life. And yet it's so awkward to do something as simple as signing your name, which you may do several times a day. So why is that? Why is it so challenging? Given that you know what your name is your whole life, you've had that handed your whole life, and yet to do something that simple is challenging.
You always do that. You always do that.
But you've always done it.
It might change, but I always do it.
Right, the caterpillar, right? Gotta stay over here, sorry. So yeah, so it's something we're used to, it's common, it feels comfortable. Now switch hands, put the pen in your dominant hand and sign your name again. And how did that feel? Natural? Say it again. Took a lot less time, a lot more efficient, smooth. Did you have to think about it or concentrate? It's automatic. Now, if you were to practice signing your name with your non-dominant hand 20 minutes a day for a month, would you get better at it? Yes, maybe. Why is that? Why would you get better at it? Training your mind, that eye-hand coordination. Practice is going to get better, so you're going to get better at that practice. Okay, so I want you to think about now, inside of you, you have a dominant negotiation style, right? It's easy, you don't have to concentrate, it flows, just like signing your name with your dominant hand. But also, inside of you are the other, less dominant negotiation styles. Once you understand that they're there, what they look like, and if you started thinking and intentionally practicing employing those other non-dominant negotiation styles, you can get better at using them. When you first start using them, you think, oh my goodness, this is awkward. It's uncomfortable, it's messy, I feel like a fraud, right? But the more you practice it, the more confident and comfortable you get with that particular negotiation. All right. So I just want to point out we're complicated people, right? There's a lot of things that go into making you who you are. Your temperament, right? So there's your temperament, your race, ethnicity, sex, your birth order, the gender or your generation that you're born into. Right? Have you probably heard about the different generations, Gen Y, Gen Z, millennials, Gen Xers, all those folks. They all have an influence in making up as a population, influencing who you are and how you respond to things in your life based on your experiences. We're going to learn about conflict style here, but there's also assessments you can do on management style. There's assessments on temperament, leadership style. All of these, there is a dominant style that is inside of you that you feel most comfortable using. The more you understand the other alternatives or options and start deploying those in your behavior, practicing them, the more confident you'll be in using them, and then that's going to increase your emotional intelligence. That make sense? All right. So you're a cross-section of all those things. So the more you understand how you roll, what makes you tick, what are your preferences in behavior, and understanding the alternative options out there allows you, like, to get your little helicopter, gain some perspective, start recognizing, wow, there might be another way I can approach this, instead of doing the same thing every time that may or may not be getting me what I want. It's easy, right? It comes natural, like writing with your dominant hand. It comes natural, but it's not always the most effective way to get what you want out of that situation. So learn to speak the language of the listener and listen in the language of the speaker. So the more you understand the people around you, it allows you now to start talking and speaking to them in a way that they understand. Breaks down those communication barriers. So the more you can understand them, you can speak their language and vice versa. You understand where they're coming from, you can hear them to the lens of where they're coming from. I hear you what you're saying. I often say this. I hear the words that you're saying aren't always what you want to be heard. You're using these words, but really I can feel you mean something different. That gets us in trouble when we start talking about consent. I'm on campus too much. I hear a lot about that. But yeah, but when I talk with some people, they just struggle with trying to get their thought out. And so you can either take them literally and dismiss them, or try to figure out what are you trying to say. And then communicate with them and try to get them to do it. All right. Let me tell you a story about a friend of mine. Let's see. He was he grew up in the valley, the Big Valley. His dad worked at Forest Service. So you imagine he lived in a lot of Forest Service housing, which isn't the greatest. And he moved around a lot. He spent his teenage years in the Valley County, so a rural kid, all his life he'd been in a rural situation, working folks at Forest Service. So he's always been in a rural situation. And he goes off to college. He goes off back east to Duke University in North Carolina. And so he meets a Southern Belle. So here's this Western rural kid meets this Southern Belle. Cecilia, whatever those big coming out parties were. She was like fully steeped in this Southern culture. And they fell in love. They got engaged. They went to the big department store to pick out their China pattern. Already, you can imagine where this guy's coming from. This is a big thing for this gal. China pattern is a big thing. So she pulls up a China pattern and says, hey, Steve, what do you think of this? He says, that looks good. Pulls up another, what do you think about this pattern? Fantastic. Pulls up a third pattern, what do you think about this? He says, good for me. She says, you don't love me. This isn't going to work. You want to break the relationship. And he's thinking, oh, it just happened. Now, what's the situation? What's the problem? Why is she so upset about the China pattern? What does the China pattern, what does the China mean to him? What's that? Doesn't have much about, then why is that? What is about his experiences? Doesn't have that background. What's his, so what did he do every couple of years? Growing up. He was moving. Right? So do you think they were packing China every time they moved? No. He probably was eating off a plastic Tupperware most of his life because it's easy, it's cheap, right? We're moving again in another couple months. We're just, So they did not have heirloom China that they were dragging around to the 15 different locations they lived in, right? So he had no context and no experience with it. What else do you think? Where else do you think he's coming from? What is he thinking about this in the future? About China. What do you think he said? What is this for me moving forward in this age? How do you think he perceived the China? Yeah, it's never going to be used. It's going to sit in the cabinet. We're just going to look at it. Now, flip it over for her. What's her perspective about China? What does it mean to represent to her? Means a lot. It's an heirloom. She probably stands to inherit her grandma's China, which she got from her grandma, right? So this is something that you're deciding, a pattern that is going to be part of your, like your crest, if you will, right? This is part of who you are and represents your love. It's a symbol of your relationship and your commitment to each other. It's something you're anticipating to have only on special occasions with special people. And it's going to be given to special people like your children or your grandchildren as they get older, as a symbol of your commitment and love to each other. So he's thinking of it as a big pain in the butt, and she's thinking that this is the thing that represents our love and our relationship. So you can imagine there's going to be some conflict there. This is the challenge that he realized very early on in the relationship, is that we're coming from two completely different worlds. It's easy to fall in love. It's harder to maintain a relationship. So they started figuring out, they said, okay, they started right there in the department store. If this is going to work, we've got to start communicating, sharing with each other. Because I don't know why the heck we're here. I'm here because this is important to you, but you need to help me understand why this is important. And maybe I can take a greater interest in what's going on here. Right? It's not that I'm opposed to it, but I don't understand what's going on. Here's where I'm coming from. And he shared with her what this represented. So he didn't care, whatever, whatever. Could be sitting in the china closet or it's going to be sitting in a box. Either way, whatever. But for her, it meant something different. So they had to come together, start talking, communicating, and sharing with each other these values. So, negotiation strategies. Okay, we're going to get to your hand up in a minute. Let me walk you through. This is part of that emotional intelligence. On this axis is your concern for yourself. Okay, so we have on this axis the concern for the other person. Right? So this is what's important to me. This is what's important in our relationship. So high, low, concern for self, right? So this is really important to me, not so much important to me. And then low, concern for the other person, high concern for the other person. So if we were in a situation where I have a low concern for myself and I have a low concern about my relationship with the other person, imagine that. It's not that important to me, and your relationship with me is not that important. So in that situation, what style am I going to adopt? What's my approach to that interaction with that individual or that group? If I don't care much about what's going on with me, it's not that important to me, and my relationship with you is not that important. What are you going to have a tendency to do? Did somebody say something? I can't hear over that. I'll throw this out. I don't care about you, and I don't care. It's not that important to me. I'm going to avoid it. Getting involved in this is not worth it. I'm just going to walk away. I'm going to avoid having to negotiate with this. I don't care. This is the I don't care quadrant. It's not that big a deal, so I'm going to avoid it. It's not worth my energy. Now, if we were to say, I have a low concern for my interest in this situation, but I have a really high concern about you and my relationship with you. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to accommodate, right? It's not that important to me, but it's really important what you want. And so I will accommodate whatever you want. Does that make sense? And then if we say, okay, I have a really high concern for myself. This is really important to me, and I don't give a rip about you. I have a low concern about my relationship with you. Now, what's my position going to be? It'll be very competitive, right? I'm going to stomp on your neck. I'm going to win this thing, right? Think about negotiating the purchase of a used car, right? I don't care you're not going to let that car go off this lot without making a dime on it, right? You're going to make sure you make money on it. I want to make sure I'm going to have the lowest price possible where you're going to let that car go off the lot, right? So I'm going to be very aggressive. I'm going to be very competitive. It's going to be a win-lose situation. Now, if I have a high concern for myself and a high concern for the other person or the other party, what am I going to adopt for a strategy? Collaboration, right? So now it's not a win-lose. So it's a win-win. I want to make sure you're getting something out of this, that your needs are met and my needs are met. So if you look at these four, which one is the most difficult to maintain or to work through? Takes the most energy and time. Collaboration. Takes a lot of work, right? But the outcome is far more resilient, right? A more lasting, more meaningful, more impactful outcome when you approach it in a collaborative perspective. Then in the middle, we're going to throw out there this compromise, right? It's where I'll give a little bit, you give a little bit, we'll find that spot in the middle. Classic, when you think about negotiation, this is a classic. So in that situation, like in the used car situation, you say, okay, I'll give you $1,000 for it. He says, no, it's 10,000. And then you negotiate till you find that middle ground. And so they may be losing a little bit, I'm losing a little bit. So those are those negotiation strategies. So can you see now, when you're in a situation, you say, okay, in a highly charged emotional situation, let me just get in my little grown, and I'm going to get some perspective. I'm going to gain some altitude, and I'm going to sit back and say, okay, where am I? What's my interest in this as an individual? Is my interest high or low? And what's my concern for this relationship? Is it high or low? Is this important to me or not? Is this important to them or not? Or is my relationship with them important or not? And that might give you an idea. Okay, yeah, it's not that important to me, but it's really important that I maintain this relationship. So I'm going to be accommodating. This is where I live a lot of my life with my wife. Right here, right? That's my sweet spot. Whatever you want, honey. It's just so much easier, right? But when the rubber hits the road in certain situations, I'm going to say, oh, right? I use it sparingly, but sometimes I'm going to be here, right? We spend a lot of time over here too, until we get so angry with each other we walk away. But we keep coming back. We keep coming back until we find that home renovations, tiny vacations. At least for us. I'll tell you a quick story. My wife is very much the accommodator. It's her default. In fact, Dirkus down there in Shoto, and Dirkus is she went down there to buy a car. And this is early on in our relationship. We want to negotiate to purchase a car, trade in our car, and one. And she's such a good accommodator that she felt it was really important to maintain this relationship with Mr. Dirkus. And so it ended up that I was negotiating with him and her about the purchase of this. Only we can better than that. We can afford that. No, you don't know how this works, right? So it was really important for her to maintain. So she was an accommodator. That's the position that she was adopting. She didn't realize, it just was hard for her to adopt anything different. And I was trying to be more the competitor. Right? This is our last stand. No more. This is the last dollar. I can't do anything more. All right, I'll do a little bit more, but not, I'm trying to find that sweet spot where he's gonna let that truck get off the lot. All right. Fast forward till 4 years ago. Car we had at the time, some guys sideswiped it, so that junkie, so we're going to go buy it. I'm traveling all over the state. She said, all right, here's the deal. You're off in, I think I was in Culbertson. She called me, I went out in the hall in Culbertson doing some training. She said, all right, I found the car. I said, Helena, I'm going up to buy it. Oh, this is good. So I said, remember, honey, you're accommodating. She said, I know, but I've been practicing. I've got it figured out. I think I can be more competitive. I said, are you sure? She said, yes, I got this. I said, all right, do it. Because I was going to be another 3 days before I came home, and she didn't want this car to leave. So she runs up to Helena, and I'm happy to say, we paid exactly what they're asking for. I call it a win. No undercoating, no all this other stuff. So we paid exactly what they're asking for, and I think it was a fair deal. It was a good deal. All right, so that's one of those things that in her mind, so she had evolved over the last 20 years as she's learned more of this stuff and she's cultivated her emotional intelligence. And she started learning about what are these other areas, these other strategies or styles, and what do they look like? How do they feel? Trying them on, seeing how it works for her. And then when it comes time, she says, all right, the chips are down. Here's my opportunity to try out my competitive on her negotiation stuff. Is that understandable? All right. So we're looking at these factors. We're going to compare collaboration with competitive. Two different things. And remember, we said collaboration is hard. It takes time, takes a lot of patience, takes a lot of understanding, a lot of questions and probing and trying to figure out what's at the source, right? What's at the bottom of what you're trying to get at. Because sometimes we'll mask our primary interests around a lot of other fluff. And it takes a lot of questions and trying to get to understand the other person to get to the core of what's motivating them. Right? So that takes a lot of patience and time, as well as for yourself, trying to be clear about what's the core of my motivation. What is my core motivation? You might have a whole lot of smoke screen stuff out here, but really there's something at the core there. And I think once you can get to that on both parties, then you can start building a solution. Right? If you're just dealing with the stuff on the surface, it's the difference between your position and your interest. Think about, maybe we'll be time to this. How much time do I have to win? 8-ish? Okay. All right, so let's look at these as we compare these factors here with collaboration and competition. All right, so the goal, right? The goal in collaboration is mutual gain. Right, we want to get a win-win. We want synergy here, where we're both walking away feeling like we've got something out of this. Whereas competition is what? What's the goal in competition? Winning. Yep, I win. In order for me to win, you've got to lose. It's all about me and my self-benefit. Where here, I'm concerned about you and I'm concerned about me. And I'll just also want to be clear, there's no right or wrong, good or bad. These are what they are. And the point is that you want to think about when is it best to employ this one or this strategy, right? Not that one's better than the other, just to be clear on that. Resource view, right? The view of resources. When you're in a collaboration or collaborating with someone, how do you view resources? That's important. And in many ways, you think, well, if we don't have enough, let's get more, right? It's expandable. Let's figure out more. And oftentimes we'll do this with organizations that are battling over something like over the budget. And that's, depending on who they are, if it's a nonprofit or something, you're fighting over crumbs, just go out and get more. Find more donations, sharpen your pencil, get a better vision, go out there and find people that are willing to invest in that vision and add more resources. They're like, oh yeah, I guess we can do that. Instead of approaching that in a competitive view, is where they're at. So in a competition or competitive view, it's a fixed pie. Zero sum. If you were to gain, it means I'm going to lose. And that might clearly be the case, like negotiating for the purchase of a used vehicle. In order for me to gain, the salesperson is going to have to lose something. Or in order for the salesperson to gain something, I'm going to have to lose something. I'm paying more than I want, or you're letting it off the lot with less than what you make. So that's a fixed pie. Issue focus for the collaboration is focused on your interests, right? Not my position. I will stay in a position. This is where my stance is, but really my interest is way back here. And I'm trying to think of a good example. I had one with school consolidation. Do you think that goes over really well, school consolidation in these rural areas? It's really hard and complicated. Why is schools consolidation such a challenging discussion to have in community? It's competitive, right? I went into a town about 5 years ago, and about 4 people before we started this discussion about as a vision for this community said, "How do you do something like the school consolidation?" And after the 4th person, I said, "When did this happen?" Thinking it was just like last year, and it's still raw. I said, "Oh no, we're bringing it up. We're now bringing it up because if you guys are still raw over that, I'll tell you this: the kids don't care. The only people that care are all you old grayheads, right? You're the only one that care about this because of we were better than it or whatever it is, right?" And so if you talk about the school consolidation, the position is it's usually about emblems and symbols and we this, you that. But what's the basis? You get to their core interest. It's like I'm concerned about my kid having to travel on a bus to wherever. What is the core? And say, how do we fix and resolve those interests? Rather than all the things that you put out there as your fluffy reasons why you don't want to have it. All right. So interest versus your position. Relationship is valued versus unimportant. I value your relationship. That's why we're going to spend the time to figure this out. I don't care about a relationship. I'm going to stomp on your neck. Did I say that here? I'm too violent. Hope that it's not offending anyone. Okay. The view of the other as a partner or the adversary. We're going to battle, to war. They use a lot of that imagery of fighting, war, battling. Communication is open versus very controlled. Information is exchanged freely. This is what I've got. What have you got? So we're trying to find that place where we're all going to benefit from it. Where in the competition, it's protected. I'm not going to share with you what I've got. You've got to get the court order in order to get what I've got. Trust is high versus very limited. Let's talk a little bit about trust. You thought much about trust in some of you standpoint tonight? Unfortunately, I do. So if you think about trust, the way I like to define trust is the higher the level of trust you have in a relationship, the lower the transaction cost there is for doing business. Right? It's a lubricant to that relationship. Low level of trust, it's when you're looking over your shoulder all the time. I just don't trust you. I don't think you're doing things right or proper or appropriate or whatever, and I'm always watching. Or if I have a high level of trust, it's like, do your thing. I trust that you got my interest in heart. I trust that you're going to take care of yourself and you're going to do the best you can. This is really important in government. Right? So we spend a lot of time talking to the local elected officials about how do you cultivate trust in your community. At some point, you're going to have to ask of them something that's really important. If you have a low level of trust, they're going to say, screw you. I don't trust you. I don't think you have our interests at heart. Yeah, we may have elected you, but I don't trust you. Right? So there's a lot that has to be done to cultivate that trust. And a lot of it's that transparency and openness. Think of all these things that you're trying to do in a local elected office. You're trying to do all these things. But if you approach it this way, this is where we see when they're approaching it this way, where we got the biggest problems in this case. Really low trust. And it's just a battle between it's an adversarial relationship between the citizens and town hall or the county court. Right? So they call us in to say, hey, make this better. I always love getting that phone call and say, hey, how do we make sure all these public buggers, you can't get anything done? Well, they lowered this high transaction cost because the trust is so low. They're up in the grill all the time. All right, not that you all are trying to be aspiring elected officials, but you can kind of see in that context how trust is so important. Trust in your interpersonal relationships. If you're a trustworthy person, you're going to do what you say you're going to do. I trust you. You say you're going to go out and do that, whatever it is, and you go out and do it, that's building trust. You say you're going to do it, and you don't, take a little bit away from that. You didn't do it this time, now I'm going to watch you the next 6 times, to see that you did it before I'm going to start trusting, okay, maybe the 7th time don't do it. If you screwed me on that first time, so it's going to take a while for you to build that trust back again. Power is shared versus very coveted, and the metaphor is a partnership versus a game, or war, or battle, or whatever it might be. Right, so hopefully that'll give you some sense. So again, when you're thinking about what position, what negotiation style should I be adopting in this situation, think about these different strategies, different factors, and that might help you determine where you should align yourself. And then I'll say, okay, today I'm going to be a competitor in this particular relationship. That's going to be a win or lose. I'm going to go through all that. Or, nope, I really want to collaborate here. Now, we're going to have you in your handout. Take your little, has everybody got a handout? The pen, marking utensil? You folks at home, if you got the handout, it was emailed to you. So on that page 1, there is this negotiation style. And what I want you to do, you can see the instructions there, but I want you to read that statement at the top. When it says, when I encounter someone whose goals are different from mine, I attempt to, and then they give you 5 options. Read through those options, pick out the one that's most like you, and put a number 5 there. Then pick out the one that's least like you, and put a 1. Right? I'm all in on this way, and this is the hardest thing for me to do. And then after the highest and lowest are picked, then go through and figure out, okay, what's the next most likely? That gets 4, one most likely, the second most likely, and then least likely gets 1. To go through with each of those questions, every one of those blanks should have a number, 1 through 5 on it, somewhere, based on what's most important gets the highest number, least important gets the lowest number. Fill that out and then score it, where you add up all the A's and all the B's and all the C's. I'll give you a few minutes to work through that. Each of the questions, and we go through and add up all the letters. Is it letters or numbers? All the letters. So all the A's, 1A, 2A, 3, whatever the value is, in response, add those up. You can see there's a little scoring box there on the middle right hand corner. No one will judge you if you have to get your phone out and do calculator. You ever wondering what happens to a red marker when it's up in the car and it's 20 below? All right, anybody need more time to do that? All right, so let's just do a quick census of the room about who's who. Did anyone score their highest? Now, again, the highest score is going to be your kind of default or what they say here is your preferred style. So who scored as an avoider? Their highest was an avoider. Two. And then how, so two, for those of you at home. How about accommodate? Who scored highest as an accommodator? All right. And then how about the compromise? I think that's going to be the next one. Compromise. So 5. And then competitor. And how about a collaborator? Did you type? Okay. Which, okay, so thank you for bringing that up. So here's the interesting thing about those. So if you're really close in score between the two, like 1 or 2 points, probably 2 or 3 points, that means that you, because you're so close in score, you can move between those two styles very easily. It doesn't require a lot of thought for you to jump from one to the other. In fact, you may not even know. For as far as you're concerned, both of those are your dominant hand system. If you have a big gap between your highest and your lowest, that lowest one, that's the one that might be the biggest struggle for you to say, hey, I really got to concentrate and think and be serious about tapping into or accessing that particular style. Might be the hardest one. So how about lowest scores? You have, so since we had no one in an accommodate, did we have anyone that's their lowest score? Okay, so 3 of you. And how about avoiders? Lowest on 1, 2, 3 of the avoiders. That's good. Well, it's not good or bad. It is what it is, right? So, but yeah, how about compromise? Lowest on compromise? And then competitor, lowest, 1, 2. And then collaborator. Other than being gee whiz, I'm not sure what that says about you, but that does give you a sense that thinking about one of those two ends. That one that's your least preferred style is everyone's most challenging for you. But just like signing your name, you're not on hand, waiting the name for the next month. The more you practice it, the more you're aware of that, the more that you're understanding what does that look like and how do I behave consistent with that in that particular situation. The more comfortable you'll be with it over time. The idea is in 5 years we come back, you'll still have your preferred style. But as we watch and observe your behavior in a variety of different situations, we won't be able to tell what your preferred style is. Because you've been able to practice it and hone it to where you can choose what style for the given situation to do to be whatever the outcome you want. You can achieve the outcome. Did I say that right? That makes sense? All right. Thoughts, questions, concerns, ideas?
Well, in my mind, they're the same.
So it can be similar to what you said, the compromiser, accommodator, and the collaborator.
They're all meeting in the middle ground.
In your mind, the way you see it or approach it. Yeah. Oh, we got to go through all those. So a lot of it comes down to those on the axis, concern for yourself on the other. I think that's where, they might appear as you just kind of think about it, but as you start, as you just see it like this on a piece of paper, they might seem fairly similar. But I think when you unpack it here about your concern for yourself and your concern for the other, it might help you differentiate that. That's why I say if you can jot down that chart. If you want to jot it down, and so you might sit back and so you say, okay, what did that crazy bald guy from Bozeman say about this again? You refer back to your notes and say, oh, that's right, right? So that I have a really high concern for the other person here, and it's not that important. Really not that important to me. So I will accommodate them. You want this? Great, I'll give you that. Because it's not that big a deal. Which would be different than the collaborator, where it is important, but it's also important to you. My relationship is important. I don't want to compromise. So I'm gonna approach it a little bit different than just rolling over. Yeah, I haven't. Most of you just talk about this. This is the first time in a long time I've asked what your non-dominant. But it would be interesting to see. I haven't talked with many people that said, "Oh yeah, I'm a couple points of 3." Or is that where you're at? So you said avoidance. So right here. Oh, interesting. That's kind of interesting. Yeah. So you're pretty. Yeah, you kind of roll with it. Yeah, so you may not have to work too hard to go from here, because avoidance and collaboration, those are completely. And so, given the situation, you can probably operate in any one of those 3 areas without having to concentrate or think about it, which makes you more versatile, makes you more emotionally intelligent when it comes to negotiation. See, they didn't know that. They didn't do it, huh? Yeah. So now part of it is now putting, what I like about this, have any of you ever heard of the book, Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? I've heard of it. It's a pretty famous, popular book. He goes through and he takes these habits. He says, anyway, it's like organizational behavior. One of them is like putting first things first, right? Which means prioritizing your day and making sure you're doing the important things, you get the important things done. Because we can spend a lot of time doing stuff that may not be right stuff. So the first things that need to be done first on your list, right? It's not a huge leap. We probably all know that intuitively. But what he's done is he's put a language and words and a term and a phrase around it. He's labeled it, named it and claimed it. This is what it is. So for just like this, we've named it and claimed it for you. So now you can say, oh, avoider, or oh, compromiser, oh, collaborator. I now have language and a name associated with the behavior, but I can now be intentional about it, rather than just being, oh, it's intuitive. I kind of gravitate towards that way. Now, instead of gravitating towards it, you can intentionally say, no, I'm deciding to do this, rather than just kind of stumbling into it. That makes sense. So a lot of this stuff, when same with management styles and everything else, they're identifying and naming for you something that you can put your finger on it and say, yes, that behavior, that whatever it might be, I can choose that. I understand what it is. Or what it's not. Right? I know I don't want to do that. In this situation, when I'm going to buy the used car, I don't want to be the accommodator. I know that. But what do I want to do? Gives you some language around that. Other thoughts or questions? Okay. Bust through this. All right, so we got good in here. So there's a couple questions here I want to talk about. So what are the problems with relying on one style too much? Every situation is a collaboration. What's going to be the downside of that? It's slow, cumbersome, lots of energy. And sometimes we just may not do it. Okay, not that important. Right? So what's the right strategic approach for this problem is the question you want to ask yourself, right? It's getting in your helicopter, you have some of that perspective and say, okay, what's the pathway to get the solution I want? Now I can be intentional and choose that pathway, whether it's an avoider, accommodator, collaborator, whatever it might be, to get there. So it's being intentional about it, not just stumbling into it by accident. So listening too fast could be some of the problems when you're dealing with individuals. And this is going back, I wanted to kind of put some more here when you start thinking about conflict and interpersonal challenges that you might have. Negotiation strategies is a way to help you manage that and manage the relationship. A lot of it's also communication. So listening too fast. When I say that term, what do you think? What conjures up in your mind when you hear the word or the phrase listening too fast when it comes to managing conflict, challenging relationships? We're just slowing down. Listening is like lost art. It's something we need to try to figure out how to bring it back. The art of listening. Thoughtful questions and exploring situations rather than coming up with a quick solution. Got the answer. So using what might be the impact of words I am choosing to use? Am I going to inflate? This is my problem all the time. No. Sometimes I choose when I'm responding to someone's question like I want to do it. Shocking. Okay, what's like? And I want to shock them and in a way make them feel stupid. Because then they will understand the error of their way. It's not healthy. So I'm always trying to check myself and say, no, what I want to say is this, but that really isn't really what I want. It might make you feel good when I say it, but then there's consequences. And I may marginalize that, but I may distance themselves from me, and my ability to influence them is then reduced. The ability for me to be able to manage that relationship in a way that's going to be productive for all of us. So, yeah, it doesn't only work for me. So conflict is opportunity. Time. So good science requires attention. I want you to embrace that. Think about that. When I say tension, good science, good governance, whatever, the way we have our society designed, or just the way we operate as humans, is inherent in that is tension. Right? That tension pushes us to find better solutions, pushes us to be more creative. When JFK made the declaration that we'll put a man on the moon in 10 years, do you think that created some tension? Positive tension? To accomplish that? So a very clear vision, wasn't it? Very clear. We know exactly what success looks like because there will be, again, there's no ambiguity there. We're able to accomplish that. We reprioritize our national vision, our national work, our efforts. We put a lot of treasure into that goal. We think, well, what was the point? What was the point? Other than to win the space race, the personal. But what were the other consequences of making that tremendous investment, a public investment in that way? Yeah, we had a badge we could wear around for a while saying, ha ha, we did it all. But think about this in your pocket. Think of all the spin-offs that came from that effort. leaps and bounds of technology came out of that started a flywheel within the United States. It became very research and development oriented. Tremendous amount came out of that effort. So yes, we got a person on the moon, but there's so much more of an impact that we have in the whole world in discovering and understanding of science, technology, that we're still paying dividends to that. Big impacts. And that comes from that tension, right? We had to make choices and trade-offs. We had to negotiate, we had to debate and say, is this the right thing for us to do? Apparently, we all got behind that idea, that vision. This is public good, or this is public investment. Think about it right now. Think about what GM just said a few weeks ago. What was their big announcement? GM. Say it out loud. It was electric cars, right? Yeah, they made a big announcement. I can't remember what it was now. It was like their whole fleet was going to be electrified by 2035 or something. What's pushing that? I'll tell you it's pushing. It's China. China, if they want to be in the Chinese market, they're saying we won't accept any vehicles that aren't electrified. They're saying that's a huge market. And if we can't meet that market, so they're not going to say, well, we're just going to make cars just for China and then internal combustion cars for everybody else. They say it doesn't make business sense. So what's driving that is Chinese policy is causing them to say, we're going to push and figure out. And if no one ever says, there's the line, that's the standard, that's where the tension is, it forces us to start being creative. We never have a standard, we're never going to push ourselves to find solutions to some of the vexing problems that face us today. Right? We've got a lot of challenges. We gotta have that tension to push ourselves and say, all right, and it chips it down, so what are we doing? How are we going to solve this? How are we going to work through it? Tension. Tension leads to better decisions, more creativity. Start arguing about who is right and who is wrong. Start figuring out how do we move forward with whatever we're facing. Stop blaming and judging others. Explore each other's stories. Where are you coming from? Why? What's motivating you? How can I, with that understanding, how do I help you get what you want? How do I get what I want? You're in a collaborative relationship. Move from certainty to curiosity, right? Old woman, young woman, right? Adopt that position of inquiry and say, hey, help me understand what you're seeing, because I don't get it. Shift to a learning stance rather than a stance of certainty. I know it because I'm the smartest person in the room, right? It never works out. So help me, be a little humility there to help me understand what's going on here, because I may not be the smartest person. And then separate the interest from the position. Right? I know what you said. This is your position. Really, what's your interest behind that? And how are we doing? Oh man, my clock says 8-ish, nothing. Right on the money. So, any thoughts or questions? And was this helpful? All right, take the handout, keep it as a resource. It's also going to be taking pictures, which is helpful too. And then hopefully, as a result of this, you might have a little bit more insight as to how you operate, what your default or preferences, and then be able to choose now because you have the option. You named it and claimed it for you and say, okay, how do I want to move in this situation differently? So with that, I'll turn it back to you. Do you want the...
Okay, thank you, Dan. That was awesome.